Let's bring in White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany. She joins us now live. Kayleigh, good morning to you. And obviously you're joining us ahead of the president's trip this morning. We were listening to you in the briefing room yesterday talking about the final edits on White House police reform. What can you tell us this morning is in and what is out?
Yes, so I was just in a meeting about this very topic. I don't want to get ahead of the president and announcing what will be included, but I'm told that now we're at the point of approaching various stakeholders, ensuring that this is the right way forward, making sure that we hear the voices of all of those and that this is an appropriate piece of policy prescriptions that protect law enforcement and make sure they're able to do their job and protect our communities, but also has the appropriate amount of reform to take into account and to address what we saw in that horrendous video of the death of George Floyd.
In particular,
I'm not sure that. Okay.
Can we hear? Okay.
Go ahead, Ed.
Joe Biden was on the Daily Show last night talking about what he wants from police reform. Take a listen to this.
When we were funding community policing, the crime rate went down, and the visibility of the, and the extent of brutality went down too, because people know who's in the community. But it's much bigger than that. It's complicated. But I think we should turn over as much as we can to non-armed police officers to de-escalate things related to mental illness, homelessness, and drug abuse.
This idea from the likely Democratic presidential nominee that we should have more non-armed police officers, where's the White House on that?
I haven't spoken to the president about that in particular, but let me say this about Democrats and what they're putting forward. The real motive of Democrats here is undergirded in the defund the police movement. Some are endorsing lighter versions of that, or they're trying to claim making money contingent to police units and to departments is somehow, it's kind of like the light version of defund the police. But make no mistake, defund the police means defund the police. And it doesn't matter who you're talking about in the Democrat Party. That's the real motive here, as we've heard from Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, all the way to the mayor, the governor out of Michigan, I believe it was, who said, in fact, that this is a movement that she likes the spirit of. So the Democrats are signaling that this is where they'd like to go. And defunding our police officers is an untenable proposition, one that would cause mass havoc, as we saw in L.A. when they announced removing $150 million from LAPD, and we saw a 250% spike in homicides. That's not what we want in this country.
Kayleigh, I want to ask you about the situation in Seattle in just a second, but first on the idea of reforming qualified immunity. This is at the top of some congressional Democrats' list. You said this is a non-starter in the briefing room yesterday. Do you think you can get anywhere without touching that?
I think so. Look, we're very hopeful. There are models of reaching across the aisle, as we've done on many issues, and Democrats coming on board. A great example of that was the First Step Act, where really both parties came together, put the nation first, and under the leadership of President Trump, we were able to rectify grave racial disparities in the way we do sentencing in this country. That's the model. That's what this president was able to do, to build that bridge, and I think that's the model going forward, and we really hope to achieve that with our Democrat partners in Congress, and we hope that they'll be reasonable.
Okay, so on to the situation in Seattle. Does the president plan to use military action on the streets of Seattle? You saw the back and forth with the governor and the mayor there. The president putting out a tweet calling them domestic terrorists. They've taken over the city, run by the radical left Democrats, calling for law and order. If you don't step in, I will. What was the president's message there, and what are his intentions, Kayleigh?
Well, the president's message is that he will secure the streets in this country, when his first preference is always local leaders doing their job, mayors doing their job, governors doing their job, as they're supposed to do. They, after all, have the police power as embedded in the Constitution. But when they didn't do their job, last Monday, this president said, I will secure our streets. And what he did was he surged the National Guard. He made D.C. safe. He surged the National Guard in Minneapolis, made Minneapolis safe, and had the military as an absolute last resort your backstop. So he's emphasizing that tool is always at his disposal, that security is number one, that the men and women who have lost their lives in these riots, from Officer Dorn and Officer Underwood, is unacceptable, and many other innocent civilians. We can't have that in this country. Antifa will be stopped under the leadership of President Trump from wreaking havoc and burning down buildings and injuring 750 law enforcement officers and destroying 150 federal buildings.
Kayleigh, last night in Richmond as well, there was a statue of Jefferson Davis taken down, as you probably know, by protesters. Former general, retired General David Petraeus has written this in The Atlantic about what he wants to see. Take Confederate names off our Army bases. It's time to remove the names, he writes, of traitors like Benning and Bragg from our country's most important military installations. As you know, the president tweeted yesterday, my administration will not even consider the renaming of these magnificent and fabled military installations. What's the thought process right now when there's a lot of debate and change going on in America right now that the president is saying we're not even going to consider something, we're not going to listen, we're not going to have that conversation?
Yeah, what the president saw when he looked at this issue, and I was with him when we went through this yesterday, he takes it personally offensive. The notion that the men who deployed to World War II, to World War I, to Korea, all across the world, to Vietnam, the last bit of the United States many of these men saw were these forts. And to somehow imply these forts were racist installations, and that's the last thing they saw as they left, many of whom lost their life overseas, the president will not stand for that. The president will respect this because these forts and these names are associated with the heroes within them, not the name on the fort.
Want to move on to the recent Gallup poll that is getting a lot of headlines, a lot of attention, Kayleigh, and ask you about that from the White House this morning. This is the new Gallup poll showing Trump's approval rating at 39%. Those that disapprove 57%. Also, Joe Biden with head-to-head matchups now showing significant leads. What is the president saying now about this new polling, Kayleigh?
Well, we believe that Gallup poll is by no means an accurate portrayal of where the president is. Here's why. It's a poll of adults. It's not a poll of registered voters or likely voters, the gold standard. It only polled 25% Republican. That's a very low number of Republicans to poll. It also was taken before the absolute amazing economic numbers that came out. That's when the survey was done. Before that, the economic numbers, it was a 10 million swing. They thought we'd lose 7.5 million jobs. The president gained 2.5 million and 300,000 for African-American men and women in this country. So before that, and notably, even Gallup said the president's doing better among Republicans at this time than President Obama was doing among Democrats.
Kayleigh, Joe Biden, I mentioned before, was on the Daily Show last night. He says he fears that the president is going to try to steal this election and that it may come down to the military having to come in and remove the president from the White House. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a ridiculous proposition. This president's looking forward to November. This president's hard at work for the American people, and leave it to Democrats to go out there and grandstand and level these conspiracy theories.
All right.
Thank you.
We appreciate you being here.
Okay.
Thanks.